You've just entered the Extra Zone Arcade. The new Super Mario Bros. Era is in full effect now in the Mario 40th Anniversary Superspective. We've really come a long way from that first episode, I can barely even remember it. Anyway, 2D Mario returns on the Wii, marking the first time in over 18 years we get a new one released on home consoles. A kid that grew up playing Super Mario World would have just paid off their first mortgage by the time New Super Mario Bros. Wii released. But why did it take so long? If you watched the episode I did on New Soup DS, gotta keep those plugs shameless, you might remember that during the late 90s and early 2000s, 2D games were on a decline in popularity. This was felt on the development end as well as sales and general perception. They weren't seen as exciting or as enticing as the new hotness that were the fully 3D experiences. So, Nintendo essentially tested the waters by bringing back 2D Mario on a handheld. And it was like a moderate success, I guess. So this gave them enough confidence that 2D titles can stack up to 3D ones, and more importantly, that they can coexist. Development would begin on a kind of indirect follow-up to New Super Mario Bros. From Go, Miyamoto wanted the team to take a shot at cooperative play features, something that had been considered for a handful of prior games. See, he's been wanting to implement that as a feature for quite some time, but it either fell through due to hardware limitations or being too antithetical to the game design. So this time, the game would be designed around it from the jump. Thanks to the Wii's more impressive processing power compared to previous generations, they were able to get 4 players working together running smoothly. Super Guide was designed to give the more casual user base of the Wii a reprieve if they were having trouble, but generally they wanted this game to provide more of a challenge than the DS game. Unlike that game, we have a couple different composers working on the soundtrack this time, Shiho Fuji and Ryo Nagamatsu. They were under the direction of Kenta Nagata, and advised by none other than Koji Kondo. You're getting that classic Mario vibe, but with an updated feel, which was also the aim of the DS's soundtrack. In fact, a handful of tracks in this game are just arranged versions of tracks from DS. A demo was playable at E3 2009, where players and critics came away satisfied, but would that feeling carry into the final release? Well, we'd find out when the game dropped that year on November 12th in Australia, November 15th in the US, November 20th in Europe, and December 3rd in Japan. People loved it, with the most praise coming from adapting the classic Mario gameplay nicely into a widescreen format. The multiplayer being a particular highlight for being pure chaotic fun. But does the game hold up? And does it actually bring anything new to the table as the title suggests? New Super Mario Bros. Wii is a game I have a fairly long history with. As a matter of fact, this is the first Mario game I ever played. Yep, this was it right here. The game that introduced me to the world's most famous plumber and his fantastical world. I played it at a friend's house back in early 2011. I moved around a lot as a kid, so I just recently settled into a new school and was fairly quick to make friends this time around. I made friends with another kid who was pretty keen on video games, and I mean more than I was. Dude had practically every console under the sun and a good PC. Well, as good as a PC could be in 2011. Like most people I knew, he had a Wii, and wanting to get more into Nintendo stuff, I asked to give it a shot. We played some New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and I remember specifically getting to the Poison Forest level, 5-2. We kept throwing each other off the raft as enemies bombarded and kicked our asses for like 15 minutes. Up to that point, it was some of the most fun I'd ever had playing a video game. We played a few other Wii classics like Wii Sports, Mario Kart Wii, and of course, Sonic and the Secret Rings. Specifically, the party mode that was low-key the better part of that game. I actually didn't even know what the game was at the time, I'd never heard of it. So for years after the fact, I always wondered what that weird Sonic Mario Party clone was on Wii, not realizing it was a mode in Secret Rings. Okay, tangent aside, I would pick the game up using some pocket money I'd been saving around 4 years later in 2015. Much like the Galaxy games, I honestly don't remember if I ever ended up beating it, but I feel a little more confident in saying I did this time. Now, this was after I played and beat New Super Mario Bros. U a couple times, so the game didn't impress me as much. Then I played through it again in 2018, and for some reason it just wasn't clicking. I remember just kind of being frustrated with it by the time it was done. Not sure if it had something to do with the fact that this would be the first time I played it mostly solo, but it just wasn't hitting. Then I played it again in 2020 and mostly felt the same way. At this point I wondered if the game was even the same one I had so much fun messing around with just a decade prior. Was I just getting old and losing my whimsy at the angsty age of 17? The answer is yes, we all kind of went through that phase. But thankfully it didn't last long, and I played the game again all the way through in my Mariothon series back in 2023. Actually, by the time this comes out, that series would have hit the 2-year mark. Shoutouts to you if you've been watching all the way since then. Here's what I had to say about New Super Wii when it was all said and wrapped up. But anyway, that's it for New Super Mario Bros. Wii. So yeah, it's a good game. It's not an amazing game. It's not a fantastic game, but it's a good game. Yeah, in all seriousness though, I think it's definitely better than the DS game. Like, they definitely improved on the level design and enemy placement and other such things. I think it can be a bit too easy in a lot of areas. I think
the most difficulty you're gonna get out of this game is really the final world and like kind of World 6, I think. I feel like I talked more about voice acting than the actual game. But yeah, no, New Super Mario Bros. Wii is a fun game. It's a good game. It's not a great game, a fantastic game, an amazing game. It's also not a terrible game. It's just a good game.
So yeah, I liked it a bit more than the DS game, but I didn't have a lot to say beyond it just being a solid experience. This series marks the third time I'm playing through the game solo, but the first time I'm doing it with 100% completion. Maybe I discovered something that would change my mind? It's Princess Peach's birthday, so she invites all her closest friends over to celebrate. Mario, his younger brother, and a couple toads. For a princess, she sure keeps her circle small. But the guest list expands pretty soon when a totally not suspicious giant birthday cake slides into the room. Bowser Jr. pops out, followed by the surprise return of the 7 Koopalings, who haven't been seen since Mario World. Get used to seeing them for several more games now. They throw the cake onto the unsuspecting princess, total airhead that she is, and is taken off to see Bowser. I mean, look, at least they got creative with their methods this time. So, the bros and the toads head off to get Peach back and salvage her special day. As they make their way through their 8 different regions, they battle and take down each of the Koopalings and Junior before reaching the big boss himself. Wrong franchise. Metal Gear Retrospective 1? Just when the team thinks they've taken Bowser down once and for all, he comes back even bigger and scarier than ever. At this point, escape is the only option, at least until they come to a switch conveniently placed under the cage holding the princess. This drops the floor out from under the Koopa King, meaning the princess is safe once again and the birthday festivities can continue. Yeah, we're not breaking any new ground with this plot, but I think it makes sense just to keep things simple when it comes to the 2D entries. If I could get a little ahead of myself here, New Super Mario Bros. U has an extremely similar opening and general plot progression. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Still though, it would have been interesting to see where the plot would have gone had Peach been playable like they first considered. She ended up not making the cut due to them not wanting to program her dress physics. Not even sure what that means or why it would be hard to do, but alright. Gameplay wise, it's about what you'd expect coming off of New Super DS, but it feels just a little more polished. I described how at times it sort of felt like that game was playing at half speed or like you're underwater. That's been completely fixed here with much snappier and more fluid movement. Though, like I said in that episode, the reason likely just comes down to being on a handheld with a small screen versus a console capable of playing in widescreen. Turning feels more responsive and picking up speed feels just a bit more natural. Most of the same moves return, the triple jump, ground pound and wall jump, but we have another feature returning from World in the spin jump. Shake the Wiimote on the ground to perform it, but don't think you can stomp objects that hurt you before like you could back then. You'll just take damage. Shake the Wiimote while airborne and you'll do this little twirl move. Great for extending your horizontal distance from a jump, correcting mistakes, or getting your bearings. It's surprising what such a minor addition to the moveset can do to change up the way you play. I found myself relying on this thing pretty heavily whenever I had to face a platforming challenge. You can also do it multiple times in the air, so if you're ever bored while falling, just make yourself dizzy and cause Mario motion sickness. He'll probably also get dizzy with continued use of one of this game's new power-ups, the propeller mushroom. Pretty much every Mario game needs to have some kind of flight power-up, but this one was always one of my favorites. Shake the Wiimote to spin up into the heavens, then float down and back to safety. Or, you can drill down, busting blocks in the heads of your enemies on impact. It's very straightforward and very fun to use in pretty much any level. The penguin suit is another new power-up in this game that lets you throw ice balls, belly slide, swim with more accuracy, and eliminate ice physics. Yeah, this thing is straight up goated. I didn't get to use it nearly as much as I would have liked to in my playthrough, but it's just so damn fun to use. It grants you arguably the best collection of abilities a single power-up has seen in this series, and that's no exaggeration. Meanwhile, the returning ice flower only lets you shoot out ice balls that freeze enemies into ice cubes, then you can throw them to defeat other enemies. You can't walk on water like in Galaxy, and your character doesn't turn into a badass ice sculpture either. It's just a recolor. A recolor that's very appealing to me for some reason, but still a recolor. Ice not your thing? Well, you'd be glad to know that the Fire Flower is back, and I think at this point it's the most recurring power-up in the series. Yeah, even more than the Super Mushroom, since that one doesn't show up in most 3D entries. The Fire Flower at least has the 2 Galaxy games to its name, giving it a leg up. Anyway, it works as it always does, nothing more to say there. The aforementioned Super Mushroom returns along with the Star, which both still make you grow in size and become invincible respectively. Lastly, the Mini Mushroom is back from New Super DS and is generally a little better here due to improved controls. It still makes you all floaty, but it doesn't feel like everything I do is on a weird delay, so that's a huge plus. You can still run along the surface of water and duck into miniature pipes like before, and taking any damage still kills you instantly. Though, just by nature of it feeling better to use, the risk versus reward feels a lot more, well, rewarding than in DS. Now this segment is what I'm going to call power-ups that aren't really power-ups, and we'll start with the Power Block. We haven't seen this thing in a mainline game since Super Mario Bros. 2, but it works like it did there. Hit it from underneath or throw it to kill every enemy on screen, or drop items and collectibles down. Next up are the propeller blocks, which give you the same abilities as the propeller mushroom, but unlike it, you can bludgeon some bad guys with it. Fun for the whole family. Glow blocks show up in only a handful of dark levels to illuminate your path, and Yoshi returns. He has his signature extendable tongue to eat enemies, fruits, or even power-ups once again, and can flutter jump. Like in Mario World, dismounting the dino in mid-air will give you a little extra height, but only a total monster would do something so cruel. Unfortunately, the no pets rule shared by castles and ghost houses back in World extends to every level where Yoshi isn't present. You gotta leave him at the goal pole when the level's wrapped up. It's kind of upsetting to see that again they're limiting Yoshi in games post-World, just gives the impression they don't want to design the rest of the game around him. Though it is a little more reasonable in this case, what with the whole 4-player thing this game is doing. I think it made sense ultimately, but still, would have been nice to have the freedom to play any level with him like you could back then. Regardless, it's always nice to have good old green available whenever we can get him. And his alternate hued buddies also show up when there are more heroes in play. One of my favourite levels in this game is actually one that features T. Yoshi Saw Muncher Koopas. Yes, that is really his full government, I shit you not. 6-4 is very reminiscent of Chocolate Island 2 from Super Mario World with the more vertically oriented design and mountain range setting. This level has a great blend of platforming and exploration, as well as plenty of Monty Mole munching. You'll need to either use the flight capabilities of the propeller suit, or Yoshi's aerial prowess to make it through this treacherous course and collect all the star coins. More on that later. 3-1 was another fantastic level that takes full advantage of a power-up, this time the penguin suit. It's surprisingly challenging for this point in the game with a couple of pretty tricky star coin locations to boot. Nothing beats gliding over the ice in penguin form, taking out any enemy or obstacle that dares to stand in your path. My favourite level is 9-1 though. This is one of the special world levels in this game, more on that later as well, so you can expect that this one is one of the more tricky ones. Just pure platforming in this one. This is where they really put your mastery of the game's controls to test, and if you can't keep up, it's straight into the pit. Fear not though, the propeller suit comes in clutch here, so try and keep a hold of it and have your wits about you. To even get to that point in the game though, you'll have to be sure you've collected all the star coins, which return from DS. Once again, there are 3 in each level, and they can range from being in plain sight to being really well hidden or hard to reach. Just like in that game, a lot of the enjoyment you will likely get from this experience is just tracking these things down, and the feeling of satisfaction when you beat a course with all 3 in hand. This game strikes a much more comfortable balance than DS does between speeding through and exploring levels, since both are actually really fun here. I really gotta stress again just how much better the controls and physics are here. This game seriously has one of the most satisfying flow states of any Mario game. You can really speed through these levels with some good precision, moveset utilization, and memorization. The triple jump and spin are the main catalyst for this fantastic movement, as they really carry your momentum. I think it's a strong showing of game design when exploration and speed are both rewarded, albeit in different ways. Back to the star coins, there wasn't a particular one that stumped me in this game like DS. They were all pretty fun to collect and challenging to a reasonable degree. I like it. In all honesty, this game is only really second to New Super Mario Bros. U in that regard, but we'll get there soon enough. You'll need to gather the star coins in each of the 8 worlds to access a corresponding level in World 9, the special world of this game. These are home to some of the toughest challenges in the game. 9-6 is an extremely perilous level with nothing but magma. With some of the toughest star coin locations and insta-kill hazards all around, this one gave me some hassle in reaching that coveted 5-star save file. No more than the hardest level in the game, 9-7 did. You ask anyone who played all the way through this game what the hardest stage is, they'll probably point to this one. You're constantly on thin ice here, literally. So you'll be slipping and sliding everywhere while making tight jumps and avoiding these Venus fire traps. Thing is, even if their fireballs miss you, there's still a very real threat right under your nose, as every tile of ice you walk on has a nipper plant encased in it. They're doing their best impression of Rayman in Smash Ultimate, but unlike him, they can be thawed out, making the floor untraversable without taking damage. So as you can imagine, I died here. A lot. But man was it satisfying when I finally made it through, and thankfully, 9-8, the final level of the game, was pretty much a cakewalk. Or a cloud walk in this case. Up until World 9, the 8 worlds are using the same set of level themes we've become accustomed to since pretty much Mario 3. Those being grasslands, desert, snowy forest, beach, jungle/rainforest, rocky mountain, sky, and darklands. In fact, these are all the same as in the DS game, just Worlds 3, 4, and 5 had their themes shuffled around. You get used to this, by the way, because it's all you're going to see in this sub-series. Hell, it even starts to bleed into the 3D games a little. To be fair to this game, this was only the second time they did it in this particular way, so we can let it be. Still, it does feel like we're just kinda going through the motions again. Ghost houses make a comeback, once again being mazes filled with tricks and traps, and home to a handful of secret exits. Those also return and work just like before, unlocking hidden levels that you'll need to beat for 100% completion, or granting access to a warp cannon. Those will send you to a world later in the game, acting as, you guessed it, this game's equivalent to the warp zones in early 2D Mario. Airships have finally returned to the series after pretty much being absent since their first appearance back in Mario 3. Though I guess there was the sunken ghost ship in World, and you do board a couple in Galaxy, but for the sake of argument, let's say traditional airship level. Yeah, this was the first game to bring that back. You'll be avoiding cannonballs, fire, and Mecha Koopas in these flying doom ships, just like back in the day. The iconic music track is back, and yes, I'll admit that's mostly why I didn't include those other examples of airships to be traditional ones. You just gotta have this theme there or else something just feels like it's missing. At the end of these, you fight Bowser Jr. in his Junior Clown Car. That's right, it's back and in kid size now. You can bet the little menace will try to impede the plumber's progress any way he can. In World 4, you gotta propel yourself up and crash back down onto his head to stop him. In World 8, he takes his dad's car for a joyride, one that'll spell the end for you if you don't dodge his fireballs and spiky bombs. Ground pounces in the bombs right back at him, which will probably result in a good scolding once dad finds out. Fortresses and castles are back, and this is where you'll fight each of the 7 Koopalings. Each of them takes 3 hits to defeat, and the first battle will generally be like in Super Mario Bros. 3. Just dodge their blasts and avoid the spinning shell attacks once you stomp on them. It's each of their second fights where things get interesting, like Wendy flooding the arena, Roy doing the Scooby-Doo thing in the pipes, and even Iggy summoning a big old chain chomp that yanks him around super erratically. While these fights are nothing crazy, they feel like a natural evolution of what we saw back in 3 and World. And hey, it was genuinely cool to see these guys back again after so long. Obviously, I wasn't around the franchise like that to know it was a big deal at the time, but playing through all the games in a row like this kinda gives me that perspective. I feel like I actually got to miss these guys a little over the months this playthrough has gone on. I can't imagine being an actual fan of them and having to wait 18 entire years for them to show up again. Though as a Toadsworth enjoyer, I can imagine the pain. Please bring him back, Nintendo, like, did he die of old age or what? So, once you get through Bowser's child army, you fight him head on just like in Super Mario Bros., both new and OG. But of course, just when you think you've won, Kamek drops his very convincing Peach cosplay and supersizes the king. This is probably the biggest we'd seen him up to this point, and they emphasize that by making it so your only hope is to outrun him. This fight is actually incredibly tense and really puts your platforming skills to the test. Something we don't often see from boss fights in this series. Definitely a standout moment from this game. A game that, for every great thing about it, doesn't have much about it that does stand out. Aside from the admittedly very fun co-op play, does this game really bring much new to the table? I think it ultimately has the same issue the first game does, where it's more focused on bringing back elements from prior games than really doing much to set itself apart. Now, that isn't inherently a bad thing, but when we have effectively 4 games of the same ilk, it doesn't bode well retrospectively. And at the end of the day, this is a retrospective. Although I can't criticize this game fully for setting the trend the series would follow, it does make it hard to go back without the mindset of what becomes of it. All this is to say that although I did enjoy my time with New Super Mario Bros. Wii and look forward to my next playthrough, it's not a game that ends up leaving much of an impression, at least beyond some of the nostalgia I have attached to it. I think the vibe of this game is going to be something that sticks with me forever, but the level design and structure of it are about as standard as it gets. When the game hits though, it really hits and it feels amazing to play. I think that's what allows this game to rank so highly for me. Sure, it's not the most innovative or even memorable game in the series, but it's certainly one of the most consistent. Miyamoto had hoped this game would perform as well as the DS game, and yeah, I think it's safe to say it did just that. This game being the smash hit that it was worldwide meant that it was a new introduction to the Mario series for many kids growing up in that era. I would know because I was one of them. So, in a way, I have this game to thank for introducing me to one of my favorite game series out there. And perhaps more importantly, I have it to thank for me being remotely interested in making content around this stuff. It may not be my favorite Mario game, but it definitely has been one of the most formative and influential for me. I'll always remember it for that.
Here we go! New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Finally, 4 players on the same screen at the same time. Let's say it together, because now we can play it together. Rated E for everyone. Wii console now just $199.99.
Woohoo! This way! To the end of the video. What did you all think of this episode of the Mario 40th Anniversary Superspective? And of course, what's your take on New Super Mario Bros. Wii? I'm sure a lot of you were like me and grew up with it too, so share your thoughts and memories with the game down below in the comments. As you're making your way down there, hit that subscribe button so we can really take off like Mario does with the propeller suit. Leave a like and share to let me know you want to see more content like this. And I'll see you in the next one, where it seems like the galaxy might need us once again. Stay tuned.